This video will most likely contain spoilers for the fourth season of the hit Netflix show Stranger Things. So if you haven't seen the fourth season yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, I would highly recommend that you do not watch this video. So if you've been living under a rock for the past couple of months, then you would not realize that the final season of Stranger Things, or I shouldn't say the final season, but the fourth season of Stranger Things is completely out, and there's a total of 9 episodes, and each episode is well over an hour long, which I absolutely love. I think that more shows should, especially like Netflix and Hulu exclusives, should, put out longer episodes. That way you can get more content or more story in each episode. And, that way, unless you put the whole season out at one chunk like they do on Netflix, then it doesn't really matter. But it certainly helps for people who like to binge series on Netflix. So the mostly going to be discussing the final episodes and the whole setup for the defeat of Vecna. I thought the whole setup for the final episode was really awesome, and the chemistry between the main protagonists and the sort of jocks were kind of interesting. I thought it was a very realistic portrayal of 1980s, especially not just 1980s, but like current day um, sort of interactions with people. Like no matter how you try to explain, no matter how many times you try to explain what Dungeons and Dragons is to some people, a lot of people just don't and will possibly never really understand what it actually is, and they'll always just assume that it's this evil thing that's kind of destroying people and corrupting everyone who plays it. And I thought they kind of really leaned into that the with the jocks in their kind of ignorance with the things around them and the things happening. And they which is understandable. You see this one thing happen, or you hear about this one thing happen, like with the whole Eddie being a murder suspect. Yeah, it would be understandable to assume that he's murdered these people if he was the last person to be seen with the murder victims. Yeah, it would be likely, or it would be reasonable to first assume that he had anything to do with the murders. But if you had just kind of gave him a chance and kind of just sat with him, and then, but again, it still goes back to the whole ignorance of, I assume that this is what happened, so this is what I'm going to stick with, and nothing can change my mind, no matter what way it's said and how it's delivered and who says it to me, and blah 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 and all that stuff. So I thought that was very interesting to kind of add that in, because during the 80s, Dungeons and Dragons was still sort of new, and it wasn't really as well known or as popular as it is today, and it wasn't really featured in as many pop culture television shows like Stranger Things or movies. So back then, that stuff was just kind of seen as like oh, if you spin an Alice Cooper record in reverse, you'll hear "Hail Satan" and all that stuff. But in all reality, that was just debunked and stuff like that. But back in the day, they didn't have the internet to kind of double check everything and all that stuff. So it's just sort of an interesting thing, how they, kind of just played into that. And the one thing I liked that I thought was really interesting, and it's sort of kind of a controversial point in the final episode, is Eddie's solo when he's on top of his trailer. They played Master of Puppets from Metallica, but people have made videos of reenacting the actual movements of Eddie's hands on the strings, and some people theorize that he was actually playing the final countdown, even though Master of Puppets was playing. Either way, I thought that was really awesome. No matter what song he was actually playing, it was still very interesting to see that. It was very cool that he finally got to be able to do that in the show, because him being a huge metalhead, was, I think that would be a very awesome moment for any metalhead back then or even today. So I enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty cool. And on the topic of Eddie, I was kind of hit hard when he died, because I kind of liked Eddie. I kind of saw a little bit of myself in the character of Eddie, because, one, I'm a giant nerd, and two, I am something of a metalhead. So those two things, those two character traits, I think, if I were to meet someone like Eddie in real life, I think the two of us would probably hit it off really well. So it kind of hurt a little bit when he did die, but like he said, he didn't want to be known for running away and being a coward anymore. So he just kind of sacrificed himself for the good of mankind, which I thought was really metal of him to do. And also the final episode, we saw the reuniting of Eleven with Hopper, which was another emotional moment, because they hadn't seen each other in supposedly a couple years, or a few months at least. And so that was sort of a very emotional reuniting of, two people who really care for each other. And, especially after everything that both characters had been through, then sort of added on to the emotion and all that stuff. And then just the whole thing was very action packed. I'm glad that they made the final episode a 2.5 hour episode, instead of kind of splitting it up into 2 hour and 15-minute episodes. So it kind of continued the flow. There was really nothing that kind of stopped it from, or kind of cut midway through an action sequence. And so they could have cut it into 2 episodes, but they chose not to, which I thought was a very good decision. And then, you just let whoever's watching make that decision of, like, do we stop halfway through and pick it up at another time, or do we just keep watching the whole episode? So again, that was a very good thing that I think they made on the production side of the episode. And staying on the production side of the whole series in general, Vecna I thought was very well done, very well portrayed. I think they picked a very good actor to play Vecna and who he was before he became Vecna. And Henry, I think the character's name was. I think they definitely picked a very good actor for the role. And the fact that Vecna was 95% practical effects was just absolutely mind-blowing. Obviously there was a few CGI tricks to kind of make it look like tentacles and stuff were moving on him, and to make the costume look a little more shiny and reflective. But considering that, again, it was a latex costume, and 95% of it was actually real and practical, I thought made it even more interesting, because normally you could just CGI Vecna in and then have an actor come in and record voiceover, but they chose to go with the practical effect of making, not only making the costume, but also having the actor go through about 8.5 to 9 hours of sitting in a makeup chair, getting the costume on, ready to film, which I think added to the production value, because again, a lot of films or TV shows would just opt out for the cheaper CGI route, and then just go in again and dub lines over, and because that's the cheaper option. But it's potentially the final season of Stranger Things. You kind of have to go overboard a little bit and splurge on some stuff. The show has definitely made more than enough money in marketing and sales of things, which kind of, I think, gave them a budget for more stuff, more practical effects and everything. So in conclusion, I thought the fourth season of Stranger Things was absolutely amazing. And if you haven't seen it yet, well, you've probably seen it if you're watching this video. I thought it was amazing and really just astounding with the production value and everything that went into it to make it what it was. I don't know if there's going to be a season 5, but if there is, I think season 5 is going to be even better than what season 4 is. So with that, I will leave you guys to do your own things, and until next time, take it easy.